2 weeks ago, I uploaded a video talking about Lords of the Fallen versus Lies of P. I talked about how I think Lords of the Fallen's bosses are harder than Lies of P's. Some people were decent about telling me why they thought I was wrong. Others, not so much. So I decided to go back, check all of my footage, play the games a little more, and now I'm back with receipts, and to talk about both of those games a bit more. So let's start off with why I think Lords of the Fallen is harder than Lies of P still. I base how difficult I think a game like a Souls-like is on 3 criteria. How far did I get into that game within those first 10 to 15 hours? Like, how many chapters did I get through? Or how many bonfires, stargazers, vestiges did I hit in those first 10 to 15 hours? Second criteria is how many tries did it take to beat each boss that I encountered? And the third one is how long was I stuck in those boss fights? With that first criteria, how far have I gotten? I feel as though I've gotten further in Lies of P than I have Lords of the Fallen. Lies of P, I've gotten to the Archbishop fight in the Cathedral in Chapter 4. In Lords of the Fallen, I've reached the Hush Saint fight in Forsaken Fen. It might be just because there's more Stargazers in Lies of P than there are Vestiges in Lords of the Fallen because of the Umbral Seedling system that it feels like I've gotten farther in Lies of P than I have in Lords. And because Lords level sections feel like they are much longer than Lies of P's. But that's for down the road when we talk about level design. So honestly, I don't put a lot of weight onto this category because the games are different lengths. What does get more weight when deciding difficulty for me is the number of tries it takes me to defeat different bosses within that time, within those first 10 to 15 hours. When it comes to Lies of P, I've defeated 5 bosses and I'm currently fighting my 6th. Altogether, I've died 42 times on bosses alone, 9 times on the Parade Master, I cleared Mad Donkey with no deaths, died once on Scrapped Watchman, 5 times versus the Survivor, 9 times versus King's Flame Fuoco, and 18 times so far on the Archbishop. In Lords of the Fallen, I've also defeated 5 bosses and I'm currently fighting my 6th. But unlike Lies of P, I've died a total of 53 times. 19 times on Pieta, 4 times versus Scourge Sister Delith, 5 times against Gento Gavarus, 3 deaths against Congregator of Flesh and against Mendecious Visage, and I'm currently at 19 deaths against Hush Saint. If I looked at every death that happened inside and outside of boss fights, I'd easily be over 100 deaths on both games. Maybe close to like 200 or over that. But just looking at how many times I've died on bosses in both games, I think Lords is harder. Because, you know, I've died 53 versus 42. That's a higher number, so to me, that means game harder. Then, if we look at how long it's taken me to complete the bosses, Lords has taken me a lot longer to complete the bosses. This is without adding in the time it takes to run back to the boss arena. In total, I've spent 2 hours and 30 minutes fighting bosses in Lords of the Fallen, compared to only spending an hour and 26 minutes fighting bosses in Lies of P. So just looking at the amount of time and tries I've spent on bosses in both games, my conclusion is that Lords of the Fallen is more difficult, at least at a boss perspective. There are other factors that make me think I like Lords of the Fallen better than Lies of P though. I find Lords of the Fallen's combat more enjoyable than Lies of P's. For me, the main things I like about Lord's combat over Lies of P is the variety of playstyles you can use and the speed and duration of animations being quicker. Lies of P feels like you are pushed into one way of fighting, and that's using perfect block all the time. If you don't get your perfect block or parry timing down, you are in for a world of hurt. It feels like you're forced into this playstyle because of the clunkiness of the dodge. The dodge has either input lag on it or its animation is so slow at triggering that it's hard to dodge a lot of attacks. I feel the same way about a lot of the attack animations in Lies of P. It feels like the tail end of their animations are just that slight bit too long before you can do anything else, and it feels like it breaks the combat flow. It's not as bad as the delay I feel with the dodge, but it's just that slight bit too long on that tail end, at least for my taste. Then Lords of the Fallen's combat to me feels much more fluid. I haven't had to rely solely on one way of fighting to survive. I've been able to go back and forth between perfect dodges and parries to survive attacks. The speed of animations also feels much better to me. Sure, I can't cut my attack off halfway through, but the attack finishes quick enough that I'm not left open to multiple attacks like I feel like I am in Lies of P. And every button press feels like it's responding when it should. Overall, I think Lords of the Fallen's combat is more enjoyable because of the fluidity that it has, even though it is a Souls-like with animation priority. And the other point that I think Lords of the Fallen does really well is having an interesting, unique mechanic. Lords' unique mechanic is the Umbral Plane. It has two major functions. If you die, you are taken to it, and you get a second chance to get to a vestige or an Umbral exit thing, or beat the enemy you were fighting. If you die in the Umbral Plane, you're done and you have to spawn back at a vestige. It's as simple as that. The other major function is as the puzzle mechanic for the game. If you don't see a way to progress forward, go into the Umbral Plane and bam, new pathway you couldn't see before. But if you stay too long inside the Umbral Plane, you get hunted down by this Red Reaper that I haven't tried fighting because that thing scares me. I think all in all, it's an interesting mechanic, especially when you compare it to what you could call Lies of P's unique mechanic, maybe? What you could call the unique mechanic that makes Lies of P stand out is the Legion arm. You have this mechanical arm that you can switch out for different effects. I'll be honest, I've forgotten about the Legion arm a lot of the time when I was playing. Going back and playing a little bit more, I've tried incorporating it more, but for me, the only one that I've really used is the flamethrower arm during the Archbishop fight, and that's the most I've actually used the arm. Otherwise, I've stuck to the main combat mechanics and trying to learn the perfect block. There's also not really a use for the arm outside of combat that I've found. It would have been interesting if you could, overload the gates with the electric arm, or get to higher areas with the harpoon one, just to make the exploration a little more interesting. Those are the main things that I think Lords of the Fallen does better than Lies of P. But Lies of P does have its good points too. I think that Lies does have less annoying level design than Lords in certain areas. Lord's first area after you're introduced to the hub area is Pilgrim's Perch. It has some of the most annoying level designs with thin walkways, a good amount of jumps, and enemy placement that can be quite annoying. Even in Umbral, all of its additional walkways are thin and you can easily fall off if you dodge the wrong way. It doesn't feel as bad once you get past Pilgrim's Perch, but it is annoying to get past it, because that is where I spent most of my time, was just getting past Pilgrim's Perch. Also, Lord's level design feels like it has a lot more circular design to it than Lies of P. It has paths that lead you back to where you were to open a small shortcut, or to force you to go into the Umbral to get to the next area to open that shortcut, or just progress. I think that Lies of P does have an equivalent section to Pilgrim's Perch, which is the cathedral when you're climbing it, but it's nowhere near as long as Pilgrim's Perch, and there's an elevator so you can easily skip it once you get to the top. And because Lies level design is mostly corridor based, it is easier to navigate and it's much more straightforward type of level design. There are shortcuts that you can find to take you back to the Stargazer, but it doesn't feel like everything wraps around back to the first Stargazer. I also think Lies' story and setting are superior to Lord's. I think the story of the mystery of why the puppets have gone crazy and what is happening to the city and its people is more interesting and grounded than Lord's story of an evil god is or has resurrected and now needs to be killed or stopped. The setting is more interesting in Lies also because of its steampunk aesthetic compared to Lord's kind of generic dark fantasy setting. While Lies of P does have its good points, overall, I like Lords more because of its combat fluidity, in my opinion, more difficult boss fights, and interesting and unique mechanics. Not to say Lies doesn't have its good points, like a great story, setting, and less annoying level design, but I just think Lords is more mechanically solid where it counts. This is the last video where I want to talk about both of these games together. Maybe I'll make another one when I get through the full game of one of them, but currently I have no plans for another video on Lords or on Lies. If you've made it this far, I hope you enjoyed and maybe understand my thoughts a little more. And if you did, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow more. Also, if you made it this far, I've recently started another channel for more artistic and crafting based videos. So if you feel like it, go check that out. Link is in the description, and I hope you have a royal day.